Welcome to Mind, Body, Soul Mastery, the podcast where transformative journeys unfold through authentic conversations. I'm your host, Brenda Staat-Tomlinson, your guide on this exploration of self-discovery, resilience, and holistic well-being. Join us as we dive deep into the interconnected realms of mind, body, and soul, unraveling the wisdom gained from the messy, the challenging, and sometimes the most heartbreaking moments in life. Get ready for deep and meaningful dialogue that inspires and cultivates empowerment. This is Mind, Body, Soul Mastery. Hello. Today I have with me Kylie Patchett. She's a wife, mother of 2 daughters, as well as an intuition-guided copywriter and designer. She's a menopause self-care coach and podcast host of the Wild and Fucking Free Show. Love that name. Kylie's helping others understand how midlife can be a time of transformation, of healing, and rebirthing ourselves into the next phase of life. Kylie, thank you so much for being on the Mind, Body, Soul podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm sorry about the naughty podcast names.
It doesn't bother me at all. Learning to speak my truth and be free and be okay with it. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. Yeah. Nothing I can do about that.
Amen. That's exactly what I'm here to talk about.
Yes. And so on this show, we dive into those authentic conversations. And sometimes it's about the messy and the challenging and the hard stuff that life brings, right? That's the human experience. But yet those things, those times can be catalysts for profound growth and transformation. And Kylie, I know you have a story that you're going to share with us about a moment of that in your life.
Yeah, I loved your questions because it actually really helped me to look back not too long ago and realize that actually the moment that I decided I wanted to feel wild and finally fucking free is what comes to mind. And I like a lot of us, arrived in I think I just turned 47, so two years ago. I was at my friend's in Sydney. I had gone to escape. That was the word very clearly that was in my head. I had a lot of things going on. I've got teenage daughters that were 12 months apart, and I was in the middle of their 16th and 17th year. So that comes with all that boundary pushing, and especially my younger daughter is like a miniature version of me, and we were butting heads really badly. And my house didn't feel, or my home didn't feel like a sanctuary, which is how I love it to feel. It felt chaotic and discombobulating and stressful. And then I had a stepdad going through a dementia diagnosis and being put into aged care. And I had a corporate job, and I had an open plan office and a big team. And I had constantly people coming up from behind me going, "Hey, Kylie, I know you're busy, but blah, 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 blah." And I also, right at the same time as all of this, so this is September 2022, had just been diagnosed with ADHD and autism. So I had all of these colliding factors, all stresses or identity challenges, particularly the ADHD and autism diagnosis. And I went to my friends, as I said, to escape. Very strong word in my mind. It was just like, I just need to get out of here. Like, I just cannot deal. And I had been noticing for a long time that my stress resilience was very challenged. And I had been, like, I'm the daughter of an alcoholic mother who battled with mental health issues. So I have been a parent to my parent for a very long time. So my childhood was chaotic, and I prided myself on the identity of the fixer. Like, I am always the hero. I put on the cape and I go and fix everything and whatever. But all of a sudden I had zero fucking bandwidth. Sorry, I'm in a sweary mood. Apology.
It's okay.
But I had zero bandwidth to deal with. And every time someone came up to me at work and asked me something, I was like, I am going to turn around and punch that person. Like, I had nothing left in the tank. Anyway, I found myself this day in Sydney. I'd walked, my friend lives in this beautiful area where there's beautiful bay and yeah, just gorgeous. You go down water and boats and very still and serene. And I went to Sydney without a journal, which is weird for me. But anyway, my friend had given me this journal and I thought I'm going to take my journal. I'd gone for a really long walk and I was finally ready to get honest with myself. And I wrote in this journal, what do I really want? And the answer was, I just want to be back to feeling wild, which is how I feel. Well, I felt when I was by myself, when there's no one demanding anything, when I could just be connected to nature and be in my truth and free, because I felt like at that time. And then I wrote, sitting on the water, I reckon I probably sat for a good, I don't know, hour writing a list of the things I wanted to be free of. And it was things like demands, obligations, a job that I hated, working for someone else because I'd been an entrepreneur and something had happened in my personal life and I'd closed my business down. So I'd been back in corporate for 7 years. And this list went on and on and on. And I was like, holy shit, well, that's what you get for asking that question, honey.
Well, it was
But
time.
Yeah, it was. And that's what I'm so passionate about midlife being a metamorphosis point, because I do feel like we get to this collision point where we've got less emotional bandwidth. Our window of tolerance, if it's already small because you've grown up in chaos like I did, it's very easy to tick ourselves out of that I'm coping zone and into I'm going to rip your face off, or I'm going to get severely depressed and get stuck in freeze mode, whichever way you go. And I did both. I want to rip your face off and now I'm crying. That was what I was doing on about a 3.2 second turnaround time. So yeah, but I feel like there is a great invitation in this midlife to really look at the things that either you've allowed, like boundaries that you've allowed people to cross, or that you've not even had in the first place, which was very much my reality, and actually start shedding the skins of all that conditioning and the habits that you've self-abandonment. I realized very quickly after that conversation with myself, I was listening to, I think, a Glennon Doyle episode. And in the conversation, they asked the question, where are you abandoning yourself? And I remember that word abandonment, like someone had driven a knife into my heart. And I thought, it's such a strong word. And I've never felt it about anyone else. But I was like, I'm abandoning myself everywhere. Literally everywhere. Like my work, I'm not doing work that I love. I'm parenting in a way that I don't love. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm eating shit food and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, it was one of those crisis points that now I can look back and think that has been the birthplace of completely changing pretty much everything in my life. Whereas at the time, it just felt shitty and stuck and hard and horrible and like I was never going to climb out of it. It's a very long answer to a very short question.
No, well, I'm just nodding and shaking my head because I resonate with so much. And I think what's interesting, as I've read your application and looked at your socials and listened to you, what's popping in my head is like, oh, I was 48 when I had my pivotal moment with the one child who was my mirror, who could put me in 0 to 60 rage just like that, where I had, and what you're helping me realize is that, oh, that was probably also perimenopause too. I didn't know. I cycles my body that, like, it just comes when it comes, it shows up when it shows up. Like, I didn't pay attention to those cycles. Some people do, they know their weeks, and I am not one of them.
Yeah.
So never put that, oh, I was probably in perimenopause too when this, and it was like all of a sudden very similar. I can't do this anymore. I can't live this way. I can't do this. And hence, boom, healing journey commence, seeking, searching for those things that just changed everything.
Yep.
Now, talk a little bit about that decision moment for you and
How did you go about? What was the next step you took? What began to change for you?
Mhm.
'Cause there could be listeners who, resonate with both of us. I'm there. Now what?
Yeah.
What did you do?
I started. So, first of all, what was really clear to me from that list was I'm a born entrepreneur and creator.
Mm,
And I was trying to once again in my life fit into a corporate hole. And now I can look back at my entire professional career with the ADHD lens and go, oh, okay, now I understand why I jumped around so much. Like I'm a forensic biologist by training. Then I went into sleep medicine. Then I went, like I've had my kids counted up the other day, 17 completely different careers. But except they're not completely different because when I look back, every single one of them is about communication, storytelling, and relationship building or training. So anyway,
Yeah.
I was really clear on I didn't want to work for someone else because I suck at being an employee. Like I totally suck. Like I do not like being told what to do, and I will be contrary about it as soon as you tell me what to do. So I have this very strong inner rebel. And I think freedom to me is my highest value. And the opposite of freedom is having to turn up at 8:30 on a Monday morning to a corporate job that I absolutely hated, that I was good at. And this is, I think, this is the invitation for people listening is like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's been something that's been huge learning for me. Like I am really good at leading teams in corporate. I'm really good at playing the corporate game. Does it come at a cost? Abso-freaking-lutely. It costs me my soul, my sanity, my self-respect, my emotional bandwidth. Like I was using every single bit of my emotional bandwidth up in the corporate office and I didn't have anything in the tank when I got home. So my poor 16-year-old who was just looking for connection and almost like a safe place to let out all of that big emotion was just getting a mother going, get the fuck out of my room. I cannot deal with you. And I just was like, I don't want to parent like this. I don't want to not be the safe place.
Yeah.
And because I didn't have that safe place. And so I was like, no, this is not my story. I refuse. And so I had to make some really difficult decisions. And one of them was coming home. I said to my husband, I know that we both know that corporate's not a great place for me, but I really want to go back into entrepreneurship, open my own business and give it a proper go. And I need to have at least 12 months of runtime so that I can also take a look at how I'm treating myself health-wise. My mental health was very, 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 very affected. I actually felt like I was quite psychotic. I remember saying to the psychiatrist that I was given the ADHD diagnosis was like, there is something wrong with me, like my mum. Like, because when you've got mental illness in your family, that's where your head goes. It's like,
yes,
there's something wrong with me. Like, and I'm not saying that I believe people with mental health issues have something wrong with them. I was so far outside of what I am used to in myself, which is keeping everything in a pile, nice and neat and controlled. And he actually said to me, Kylie, you're actually just finally being honest with yourself about things that are not sustainable. And I was like, well, that's not a fucking answer. I want a magic pill, please, doctor. And yeah, so anyway, I came home and said to Shane, my beautiful husband, who's seen me go through all of my different careers, I'd love to go back to entrepreneurship. And he's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Like, that's old news. Like, I think you just needed to get to the stage where you were willing to take the risk. And there's a huge financial risk because at that stage, I was the main earner of money. But once I got clear that I was abandoning myself, all of a sudden there wasn't much of a question anymore because it's like, oh my God, if you have that level of awareness, you can still stick your head in the sand, but you know that you're abandoning them. And it's like, I always believe that we're at choice and that we always have power to make a different decision.
yes.
I couldn't have the knowledge I was abandoning myself and continue doing it. It just didn't make any sense to me. So that was the first thing. The second really big thing was actually asking and receiving support, professional support around mental health and working through a lot of childhood trauma that up until then, I always describe living with a parent that has addiction issues, it forces you to choose, or sorry, I should say in my experience, because this is not everyone's experience, but in my experience, what that did was forced me to choose attaching to a parent that wasn't particularly healthy in the way that they related to the world. And by definition, I had abandoned myself and my own needs. And I'm talking about very little, but I had so much internalized rage towards myself and also my mother about making that decision. And I knew that I didn't have all the tools that you can have in the world. You can have this huge toolbox, but when you've got a lot of trauma, for me at least, it felt like a Pandora's box. And if I opened it, I may never, ever be okay again.
Mm.
And that felt very true for me. Even in my body now, I remember feeling like, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. And when you build up that, it's like a crab shell on the outside of your heart or something, it's really scary to let people in. But I knew that if I didn't, I wasn't going to grow through anything, and I couldn't create what I wanted, which is to feel wild and free. And being trapped in trauma feels exactly the opposite of wild and free. It feels stuck, and you can't connect to people that you even want to connect to. Like all of those things, it's the opposite, right? And so I actually started working with a narrative psychologist, which, oh my God, she's an amazing woman. And she helped me to understand. So narrative psychology is about reframing stories by definition. And I had so many stories about that I was wrong, that there was something wrong with me, that I couldn't, like things like if I'd been better, I could have fixed my mum. It's like there was no fixing. She's the child of generational trauma that she hasn't had the capacity or emotional bandwidth to be able to heal herself, right?
Right.
So I got professional support. I also completely changed my guiding question through all of this has been, how can I honor myself right now? So right in this minute, like even before we started, I was like, I'm a bit uncomfortable sitting down, so stand up. But I didn't have the ability to even understand what I needed in the moment back then. Geez, when I start talking about this, Brenda, this is such a gift because it's only 2 years. But yeah, now I have that tiny little awareness. Like, what do I actually need? Do I need to actually say in a conversation, I can feel myself getting really triggered. I want to actually give myself some space because I don't want you to be on the receiving end of the emotion that's not actually yours. And I started to say before, but I think the gift of perimenopause that I've experienced is that for years and years and years, my coping mechanisms kept this ball of trauma under the surface, right? I always think about it like this big beach ball and you're pushing it under the surface. And so my protection was emotional eating. That was my favorite. I never went down the alcohol route because I was too scared to. So alcohol's not my thing. But food, man, I can numb myself on food quicker than you can say. I don't know. Ben and Jerry's. I'm trying to think of a brand. And busyness and being the caretaker and the fixer, like they were all my numbing mechanisms, right? But then when I hit perimenopause, all of a sudden I didn't actually have the emotional or energetic bandwidth or space left in the tank to keep going. And so I couldn't keep the ball under the surface anymore. And that's why, like this time last year, so I'm just about to turn 49 in a week and a half. And on my 48th birthday, my husband's a firefighter, so daughter and her partner, and all three of them responded to a massive wildfire about 1 o'clock in the morning on my birthday. So I spent my 48th birthday on the floor in my office sobbing about being so insignificant, right? Totally nothing to do with the fact that they were on call. But that was my internal, I don't know, I think I got enough safety with the narrative psychologist to actually trust myself to feel. And far out, man, I felt like I probably turned myself inside out. But I look back and I think, again, like the ability to actually just be in the emotion and not skitter away from it like I have done my entire life. Such a gift. Such a gift. Because as a result of that, I created, like, I realized that I was feeling insignificant because I was ignoring myself, because everything that we externalize is always how we're treating ourselves. And also, I realized that I was never ever setting any boundaries. So, of course, people were crossing it. Of course, I was overspending my energy. Of course, I had nothing left in the tank for myself because I didn't even know where I stopped and where my family began, and particularly not my mother. And so, as a result of that, what a blessing. I have set some bloody huge boundaries that people don't like necessarily, but far out, man, transformative. Like, here I am a year later, and I think, hey, I am so glad that I had the space away from my job, because that's the other thing. Without, I could not have spent 10 hours at work on the floor sobbing my heart out on my 48th birthday. I didn't even have the space to feel anything.
Right.
That's been the gift. So I think, yeah, again, sorry, a long answer, but I think I left my job, and then as a result of that, I was able to just roll through, what do I actually need in this moment? What do I actually like? What do I want my business to look and feel like? How do I want to parent? How do I want to partner my husband? We've been together since I'm 21, so a long, long time. So it's like, how does our relationship change when I start making boundaries that it's not just one relationship, every relationship needed to be renegotiated, and it's been tricky.
Yes.
Tricky.
Well, I think that's just a beautiful way that you said it. And I think that I know when I work with my clients and I talk to them, like, you're beginning to heal, you're changing. Your family, you're changing the game on them.
Yep.
And now they're not going to know how to respond because you're showing up differently. And so to pay attention to that. So what were some of the things that you had to work through when you started to change the game and the dynamics with your husband and your kids that were at home?
I really understood that my getting all up in everyone's business and trying to be the fixer was much more about me trying to control my environment, because of growing up in chaos.
Yes.
One of your other needs, like, my highest need is freedom, but I also have almost the same need for security and safety.
Yep.
And so I had to really understand that when I was doing it all the time in between my daughters, because they're 12 months apart, very, very different. And they're at that love, hate stage in their relationship, right? I hope that they grow back to loving, but who knows? And so I would often find myself in the middle of conflicts with them because I had positioned myself as the referee. And then I would get pissed off and passive aggressive when they treated me like the referee. And it's like, hello, you just created that story. Like, they're just playing their part. And so one of the things that I had to get better at was realizing that my daughters and my husband, all the people that I love and want the best for, were going to be A-okay, doing things for themselves, better than A-okay, and that I could turn all of that energy that I was expending out there on actually myself. And so I had to, I think the two things that I really worked on is getting to understand when I'm seeking safety and therefore control, and understanding that actually the only true feeling of safety that I will ever have is self-trust, and understanding that no matter what happens, I have the resilience and the strength and the figure out ability and the emotional intelligence to figure out what to respond, right?
Absolutely.
And that single decision, I reckon, took probably 40% of my energy back.
Wow.
Because I felt like I was in, and with my mum and my stepdad, like, I was just in everybody's business. And I was resentful about having to do it. It's like, no one is, and my husband's been telling me this for years, like, no one is, the only person expecting this is you of yourself. And so you set these impossibly high standards and then always feel like you're failing because you can't possibly fix everything. Everyone is ridiculous. So that was the first thing. And also growing and this is a work in progress, both of these are a work in progress. Growing my capacity to feel at ease, because I feel like, it's the old familiar hell, unfamiliar heaven. So my familiar hell is shit going wrong, chaos, having to lock everything down, lots demanding my attention and my energy. And that's the energy I grew up in. And learning that feeling content and satisfied and calm and grounded and not always having that grasping, seeking, fixing energy, like that is a huge, I feel like I've come a long way. And sometimes I go, what? There I am back on that slippery slope of that condition. Like it's like that yellow slippery slide at McDonald's. It's like, it's fun because it's familiar. And then you go, yeah, but it's not fun. You know where this ends.
Right.
So I think they're the two things I really had to, and getting honest with myself, which is so boring, but it's so necessary.
I don't know if it's boring. I think getting honest with ourselves sometimes is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. But I do think midlife gives us this invitation point of what do you want to continue?
Yes.
What is actually healthy? Am I spending my resources reverently? I have a certain amount of time, energy, love, attention, whatever. Am I spending them on the things that I value, or am I contributing all of that to things that are actually creating more discord and more chaos? And really, I've done, this is what I teach in my self-care schools as well, is that a lot of just simple nervous system regulation through body and breath tools of just expanding your capacity to feel even just okay, not calm, not peaceful, whatever, but just okay, not stressed, not anxious, not on hyper vigilant with your antenna up all the time. Yeah. It's a journey.
It definitely is.
At the end.
Well, I don't think it's always going to be a journey, right? Because we're humans having this we're spiritual beings having this human experience. And
in a skin suit.
Yep. And this is what I didn't get. My experience is like, I didn't get this until into my 4th decade. I'm supposed to learn from all this stuff. And that was one of my biggest pieces and takeaway from my spiritual journey, is that everything's happening for me, not to me. So the ugly things in life, the hard things in life, even when you can't, I want to sound contrite. Some of the things that have happened in my story or within my children, I wouldn't say were necessarily wanted, welcomed. And I wouldn't necessarily say, well, they're for you. Like people, cancer, death, things like that. No one, it's not necessarily for you. Yet, in some ways, there's still lessons for you from
100%.
that experience, right? And so for you, if you think about the mind, body, soul, and the connection, which one has been the harder one for you to grasp, work with, change, whatever, connect?
I reckon I've lived most of my life in my mind, so it's definitely not going to be that one. I would say soul. I feel like practicing yoga for a long time has very much helped me connect with my body. But I feel like the final frontier, and it's definitely something that I'm focusing on this year, is creating a relationship with that authentic self at the soul level, who already knows the game plan and already it can cut through the yellow slippery dips of conditioned response and everything, and just be that calm, sure, quiet, powerful voice that says this way, and fostering a relationship often enough that I can recognize that knowing as opposed to the busyness of my mind or someone else's outside kind of influence or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's very much I always have a word for the year, and my word wasn't coming to me this year. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to leave it. And the word that came to me is the Empress. And I was like, what the hell is that about? But in tarot, it's pregnant with possibilities, but it's also, to me, when I feel into the energy of the Empress, is someone who has that quiet power and actually is listening to all three of those knowing centers, filtering, going, it's a yes from my mind, it's a yes from my body. My soul says, maybe just not quite the wrong, and just waiting for that, the 3 green lights rather than the one.
Yes.
Because usually I get a idea and I'm like, I'm off to the races.
Yes.
Yeah. So just quietly, I feel like that's going to be very good energy for me to try to emphasize this year, is just, trusting in that internal guidance rather than
that's
overthinking.
Empress is a beautiful,
Isn't it gorgeous?
it's beautiful. And a picture came to my mind, just, and to embody that mind, body, soul mastery. That's what I feel that we're here to do.
Yeah.
To learn to get the 3 to work in partnership, because yes, I too can live in my mind, but what I've learned is that what's in my mind is a lot of times been conditioned and patterned.
Yes.
And I've had to let go of that judgment and sit and train my mind to be curiosity, an observer, willing to ask the questions of my body and my soul to get my truth.
Yes. And trust the truth, even when you don't like the answer, because that's been quite the journey for me. You're reminding me of, in internal family systems, they have this concept of the authentic self. So not the parts, but the actual internal authentic self that's the observer of all the parts. And the way that they check in on where you're at, whether you're in that part, is things like, there's 8 C's and I can never remember them, but curious, calm, connected, creative, I think courageous. I can never remember the 8, but what you said about curious, that really makes sense to me, because my conditioned response is very black and white and very closed, whereas my authentic self is open and curious. And I wonder if, and it's like a field of possibilities there, rather than, like you said, this conditioned, patterned, and it's often not even our voice. And it's just like,
right. But we've believed it to be, right?
Of course.
I mean, that was my experience. And now I say all these lies I've believed my whole life are now some of the things that I'm having to work on undoing, unraveling, unlocking. Because,
welcome to midlife.
Yes. They're not my truth.
No, not at all.
Right. And
not at all.
And I believe our truth it's already within us.
Yeah.
And part of our experience is to unlock it, seek it.
Yes.
Hear it.
So true.
Learn to listen.
So true. The 3 green lights. Mind, body, soul mastery it is such a journey, isn't it? I thought in my 20s, when I first started on my sort of curiosity I went from science to looking at traditional Chinese medicine and all the Eastern philosophies. And I thought that I got the mind, body, soul thing and the interaction. And I just look back now and I think it was a level that was necessary at the time and was very useful, but nowhere near the depth of what I'm understanding as a almost 49-year-old. And I just think, thank goodness for the passage of time and the wisdom that grows or reveals itself or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful conversation, Kylie. This has been fulfilled my soul. So
me too. Billing. I love these. I love sharing, because so many times when you say something, it's just the way that you need to hear it, and just yes, that landed. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. So please share with our listeners, how, if someone wanted to talk to you more, get to know more about you, where would they go?
So on social media, I'm just Kylie Patchett, which is Patchett. I always say like hatchet, but with a P. It's an awful connotation. Anyway, and my website is actually kpcreative.com.au, and the creative has a K in it. So that's a bit more difficult. So probably just social media, because that will lead you to the website itself. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. What a great way to start the week.
Yes. Until next time, my friend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for being part of today's journey. I hope our time together brought you moments of insight, heightened awareness, and a spark of empowerment. If this episode resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with a friend. You can connect with me or today's guest through the show notes. I'm always here to offer support to guide you deeper on your path. Remember, mind, body, soul mastery is a continuous journey of growth. Be gentle with yourself as your awareness deepens. Grace and compassion will guide you forward. Until next time, I'm Brenda Staat-Tomlinson, here to guide you as you embrace your journey of mind, body, soul mastery.